Hey everyone, this is Daniel Ritchie with letsbuildgpts.com, and today I'm providing a follow-up for the February 7th RMAIIG ABCs of GPT conversation. So the first thing I want to do is show you exactly what I did in the demo. We're going to break it down so you can see each step slowly, not in the middle of a presentation, and I'll give you everything you need to reproduce this yourself. And also, I'll answer questions that anyone submitted to me on the forum after the conversation. So if you asked a question and it's not answered here, send me a message directly, and I'll make sure that I follow up with you. But I will try to answer everyone's questions here. So first things first, let's get into the Chat GPT interface, and we're going to go to Explore GPTs. And from here, we can go to My GPTs and then Create, or we can just click on Create. So the name of the GPT is going to be the Weather Getter. We're going to be very creative here. This GPT gets the weather, and the instructions are get the weather. Okay, now we could go and do all kinds of other things related to this, but this is the shortest, simplest way to success. So we're just going to go right through this. We could set some conversation starters, but we're just going to type some in. Now, once you have your GPT created, hopefully it's a little more interesting than this, you'll be able to create a new action. And we don't have any authentication that we need. And actually, we can simply get the file that's necessary to do this. So you can copy and paste. You can import from URL. Doesn't make a difference. However you get it in there, you get it in there. And then you'll see automatically, just by bringing this in, it then sees the available actions, the functions that this GPT can then access, which is get location metadata and get grid point forecast. So if you watched the talk, you'll notice that I highlighted that there were two steps in the API call. While these two endpoints exist, I don't tell it what these steps are. I don't define it how to use this. I don't say the first thing that you have to do is get the location grid point metadata and then get the grid point forecast. I don't say any of those things. I simply copy in that schema, and once the schema is available, it kind of figures out the rest for us. So now that we're here, we're going to go ahead and say, what is the weather in Boulder tomorrow? And it's going to confirm that we want to allow this GPT to interact with api.weather.gov, which is in fact what we want it to do. And it gives us the weather forecast. The weather in Boulder tomorrow is forecasted to be partly sunny with a high near 50. Temperatures are expected to fall around 46 in the afternoon. The wind will be coming from the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour with wind gusts as high as 16 miles per hour. There it is. So it's so simple. It's almost deceptive for what it's actually doing. And we talk about the multiple API calls. Well, we can dig into these a little bit. So the very first thing is it's structuring the call. Okay, so it's api.weather.gov. It's submitting the get method with the path to points, latitude, longitude, and we know from this here, if we go over, we know that that's actually the get location metadata operation that it's asking for, and the operation hash is just some unique identifier, and it passes in the parameters for latitude and longitude because we asked for Boulder, so it took Boulder and converted that into latitude and longitude for us. I'm not sure why it shows this twice. It's the same call, but we see the response, and this is what National Weather Service gave back. Okay, so this is the response data, JSON. It gives us the version, some details about the weather, all kinds of stuff that if you're a technologist, you'll have to make sense of this. But using a GPT, you don't have to know any of these things. And somewhere in here, it has the ID for the points that it has, the geometry, the coordinates, the properties. Let's see if we can even figure out. Okay, grid ID is BOU, so there must be a Boulder grid ID. Grid X is 54 and grid Y is 75. So ultimately, this is the information that we're looking for. And I don't see the office here, but let's go to the next call. And it has to pass in office. Okay, so office is the same thing as grid ID. I didn't know that. I didn't need to know that. You don't need to know this. This is just simply saying the work behind the scenes. So you have an idea of really how much heavy lifting the GPT has to do in order to figure this out. But again, you don't have to see or know or even be aware of any of these things. You just have to say, what's the weather in Boulder? And it goes through the whole process. It figures out the steps. It organizes all of that data the way it needs to be. It identifies the office ID versus the grid ID, and all this is just taken care of. We didn't need to know any of that. We just needed to know the schema, which is something that's widely available. And for those at the RMAIIG meeting, I'll send you a link directly to this file so you can import it yourself. Once you have that in place, then anything else is possible. This isn't specific to Boulder. I could say, what's the weather in London? I didn't give it. Oh, actually, it's what's the weather in London tomorrow? And it's going out to the internet. So maybe the National Weather Service doesn't have international weather. But if we say, what's the weather on Tuesday in Los Angeles? If I could spell Los Angeles correct, this would be a lot better. But let's see here. Figured it out, made the API calls, and tells us what the weather is going to be like in Los Angeles. So that's the breakdown. Really is very simple. And that's how you can get the weather forecast in 60 seconds. Okay, so let's answer your questions from the meeting now. We have, if a GPT is available for everyone who can't code and they can do anything with it, what should tech evangelists concentrate more on? Well, I think it's important to understand that the GPT can't just do everything for you automatically. It can figure out these really complex challenges and can simplify the whole process for you. But there's still a lot that needs to happen if you're going to build a real product or a real application. I think tech evangelists could still focus on GPTs, just understanding that they're not going to be they're not going to solve every problem. They're not going to be your ultimate Swiss Army knife for actually bringing something to production. But if it's something where you just want to quickly prototype an application, you want to prove something out, you want to see if an LLM can work the way that you think it might work with your real data, you don't have to build a test product or an app that can actually do these types of things. All you have to do is slap a GPT together, as long as you know the schema, as long as you have API access to that data, and then you can interact as if everything else is already in place. So that barrier to entry is exceptionally low and the ramp up time is very short. So being able to quickly access something like that and just trial and prototype, that ability has never existed before. So start there and take advantage of that GPT. Beyond that, you're still going to need those, technologists who are going to have to build these things out. And I think there are a lot of opportunities in this space around these types of things, but those will come later. The next question was during the talk, I mentioned that GPTs have only been around for 93 days. Well, it turns out that GPT can have a lot of different meanings. If we're talking about the concept of a general pre-trained transformer, that was really 2018 with OpenAI's GPT-1 model. The concept of a transformer was 2017 with Google's All You Need Is Attention paper. And there are other terms or uses of GPT, ChatGPT, for example, that came out, 2022. But the GPT, this custom GPT, this ability to copy in an API schema and say, tell me what the weather is, that's only been available for 93 days. Plugins, you could argue, are very similar to that. You could have those be available, but I think GPTs are substantially different and differentiated enough that this really is a separate, unique product that OpenAI has offered. And that came out on November 6th, 2023 during Developer Day. All right, so during the demo, you mentioned something about GPT figuring out how to connect to the APIs for the weather app. But once it figures that out, does it have to refigure it out every time someone new uses that GPT? And the answer is yes. There could be some memory involved here. We know that OpenAI just this last week released memory function. It's brand new. We don't know the details of how that works. This is a proprietary system, so it's whatever OpenAI wants to do. Now, I would make a guess, and this is not having any idea how this actually works, but I would make a guess that OpenAI is keeping track of all of these successful API calls and referencing them during the creation of the next call. There has to be a robust system in place that ensures that these API calls aren't just like wildly making things up every time. And they seem to be working really well. So they're doing something to ensure that this isn't just an arbitrary guess every time, but it does appear to be re-referencing this information. What is stored, what is kept in memory, that's OpenAI's secret sauce. They may or may not share some of that with us, but there's some mechanism that they are using. But from your perspective, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but whatever's happening behind the scenes is not something we have access to. And lastly, how did the weather app know that you wanted Boulder, Colorado? I love this question because if you're a technologist and you're building out an app, you have default data, default values. You might say, if in the absence of additional information, just set the default to Boulder, Colorado when I ask for the weather. In this case, it really is just able to process the natural language request where I say, tell me the weather in Boulder tomorrow, and it's okay. Boulder, I'll go get the latitude, longitude. I'll populate that into the API call, and I'll get the weather from Boulder. And it's magic. It's pure magic. And just asking for what you need is all that has to happen in this scenario, unless you ask for London, England from a national weather service, because that's a different country and that's international. But in any case, within the limitations of the application API that you have configured, you should just be able to ask for what you want once this is set up. And you're not limited to one single action. You could string together multiple actions, multiple APIs, have multiple systems connected, and just start asking for it to do things for you. So understanding API schemas, not even in depth, just what they are, how to get a hold of them. It's going to be a skill that's helpful for you in building out these GPTs. And if you need anything else, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm Daniel, and you can contact me at daniel@denvercoder9.com. And I look forward to answering any questions that you might have. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.